July and August 2016 tied as the hottest months in modern times. The World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, warned that the consequences of warming at this rate could soon spell disaster. They say 2016 will be the hottest year since records began 137 years ago and are urging world leaders to implement the Paris Agreement as soon as possible.
The need to ratify and, even more importantly, to implement the Paris Agreement is more urgent than ever before. Our planet is really sending distress signals, and we need to act. We need to cut greenhouse gas emissions dramatically and quickly.
Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are also at record highs. China and the US, the biggest climate change culprits, agreed to ratify the Paris Agreement earlier this month. The effect of warming in the oceans is already wreaking havoc, with coral bleaching of unprecedented proportions. Some climatologists say that the bleaching and extreme weather suggest climate change is advancing quicker than anticipated.
Sea ice cover in the Arctic Ocean recently reached its minimum extent, tying with the second lowest on record. That's according to scientists at the National Snow and Ice Data Center. This satellite image shows how the Arctic ice cover had grown in autumn and winter and then shrunk over the spring and summer. The sea ice on September 10th statistically tied with the second lowest amount of ice in the 37-year satellite record. And that happened back in September 2007. The NSIDC director says it's been a fairly cool summer in the Arctic, but scientists still believe that we will see a further dramatic loss of Arctic ice over the next few years.
This animation from NASA shows the minimum extent of summer ice in the Arctic over the last 35 years. It jumps about a bit, but there is a trend here. Less and less ice remains at the end of each summer. Look at the same data another way, and you see how the area of ice cover in the Arctic at this time of year has dropped from about 7 million square kilometres in 1980 to consistently fewer than 5 million square kilometres, and in 2012 to as low as 3.3 million.
You have year-to-year variability, but it's the long-term trends that we're concerned about. And certainly when you're going forward and you're looking at the next 20 to 30 years, there's nobody that really doesn't think that we'll see an Arctic Ocean that's ice-free in summers, because that's the direction that we're headed right now.
Less summer ice in the Arctic will open up new shipping routes. For the first time this year, cruise ships taking holidaymakers through the Arctic around the top of Canada. But it also has a dramatic effect on wildlife, such as polar bears, which live on the ice. Scientists also fear that the melting of ice will cause less reflection of the sun's energy, increasing warming further still.
As you melt the sea ice, the ocean starts to absorb the sun's energy, warms up, and before the ocean can freeze again in the winter, it has to release all that energy back out to space. And so you see this really strong amplified warming in the autumn season.
Arctic sea ice also plays an important role in driving ocean currents. These in turn affect the weather in both fisheries and agriculture worldwide, making understanding what's happening in the Arctic all the more important.
The rivers running from one of Iceland's largest glaciers have combined to become one for the first time since the Middle Ages. The rapid melting of ice in only a matter of a few weeks around Skeiðarárlög has resulted in drastic changes to the landscape. Where we're standing now, there was only the glacier in 2003. Since then it has retreated over the past 6 years, and I expected the river to change its course. In 2009, one of the arteries from the glacier dried up. The other, Sulla, disappeared last month, resulting in all the melted water flowing into the last remaining river. Scientists have said they expect the glacier's rapid decline to continue over the coming years.
Está aqui colado aqui. Está aqui tudo a arder, deixa-se arder as coisas. Deixa lá ver. Abre lá o portão.
Ó pai!
Authorities are blaming arson for 3 fires in southeastern Spain that have forced more than 1,000 residents and tourists from their homes and hotels. The blazes near Costa Blanca broke out Sunday. More than 800 acres of land has been burnt. The fire here in Bolulla continues to rage out of control, but firefighters say they have stabilized outbreaks in 2 eastern towns, like Javia. These German tourists say they were forced out of their holiday apartments.
I can say it's horrible, it's tragical, and I hope that rain will come.
Firefighters hope for the same, although high temperatures are in the forecast, challenging their efforts to fully contain the blaze.
Spanish firefighters are still struggling to contain wildfires raging in the northwest region of Galicia. Officials say dozens more people have been evacuated from the region after the blaze approached their homes. Authorities have sent helicopters and airplanes to help stop the fires.
In Greece, 4 people have died and at least 1 other person is missing after heavy downpours caused flash flooding. In the northwest, a Romanian woman and her 2 children were rescued. At least 3 of the victims were elderly or vulnerable. This woman feared for her life. I was alone. The water came up to my chest. I was shaking. I'm disabled and I couldn't open the door. I couldn't even find the keys to open it and let the water out. I was sleeping in my bed and I was soaked. Soaked. I almost drowned. The flooding affected areas from the northeast of the country all the way to Sparta in the very south, destroying homes and businesses and washing cars out to sea.
Much of northern Europe has been sizzling in unseasonably high temperatures, sending people scurrying into parks and onto the beach. In the UK, the Met Office recorded the warmest September day since 1911, with the mercury rising to over 34 degrees Celsius in the south.
I love it because we didn't really have it during the summer, so just having it during September makes it nicer. Catch up on the sun that we missed out a bit later on.
Not to be outdone, in Brussels, people also sought ways to cool off. September is not usually a hot month, but some northern regions are experiencing temperatures around 9 to 12 degrees above normal. In the Netherlands, as the experts were warning people to slap on the sun cream and to drink lots of water, for the children it was playtime. And it was the same story in Berlin. Worldwide, this year is set to be the hottest since records began in the 19th century. According to the experts, it's due to a build-up of man-made greenhouse gases and an El Nino event that has warmed the Pacific Ocean.
Tunisia is parched. The country, which oscillates between Mediterranean and desert climates, has seen very little rainfall this year. Last month, the Ministry of Agriculture said the situation would become catastrophic if there was still no sign of rain by the end of summer. Residents in poor areas, already marked by sharp social tensions, are stretched to the limit.
We have to buy a water tank for 30 dinar for what we use and what our animals use. We've sent requests to the government, but they remain unanswered. All we can do is wait for rain, God willing.
Tunisia has long been considered one of the countries most affected by water issues. This year, precipitation has dropped by around 30%, one of the worst years for rainfall on record. Repeated droughts have led to agricultural losses of more than 800 million euros in 2016, according to the sector's main union.
We're waiting for rain. Otherwise, agriculture will be negatively affected. There will also be an impact on investors in the fields of plant nurseries, and especially plantations that require large amounts of water.
Rainfall is by far Tunisia's largest source of water, but climate change is causing increasingly strong variations. The country's 30 or so dams are seeing their reserves dry out. In just 1 year, water reserves of the Sidi Salim Dam have decreased by 50%.
We still have a month left of consumption before we get to the strategic reserve. In other words, if there's no rainfall by the end of September and we have no other water resources, we will have to use the strategic reserve, and that's a very dangerous situation.
Tunisia's new government says several dam projects blocked since the 2011 revolution have been resumed. But only rainfall can help refill existing dams, and the Ministry of Religious Affairs has called on Tunisians to pray for rain.
Drought. Dams are drying up, livestock still dying. Communal farmers are the hardest hit.
Ngongoma, amongst many drought-stricken villages. Farmers depend on their livestock for survival. Cattle carcasses all over the place. A painful experience dating back to October last year. In the absence of grazing, cattle survive on tree leaves. Government relief is yet to reach them.
In reality, we have got a big challenge in this place. The drought is too high, and the rate of death of the cattle is very much high. When you go all the bush, you can get the carcass of the cattle. Everything is there. There's hungry. The cattle are starving. They are dying in hunger.
At the other end of the province, the effect of the drought is also impacting heavily on the lives of the people. At Modimolle, the Donkerpoort Dam, which used to supply the nearly 90,000 residents in and around the town of water, is running dry. It is fed by a fountain and a stream known as the Small Nile but continuing dry conditions has dried it up to the point where the water level is below the pipes that pump water from the dam to the reservoirs.
The first reason for this low water in this dam is the reason the drought for the past year and a half. It didn't rain very much here. Our normal rainfall is about 750 millimeters per year, and last year we only received about 350 millimeters.
The more affluent part of the town has long ago switched to the Roodeplaat Dam and the Magalies water scheme outside Pretoria. The Pagameng township at Modimolle, with 70,000 residents, still relied on the Donkerpoort Dam until it became impossible and then also switched to Magalies. Workers are busy drilling 2 new boreholes and reviving the existing 11 boreholes in an attempt to fill up the Donkerpoort Dam again, because there are too much strain on the Magalies water scheme. The De Hoop Dam in the Sekhukhune area of the province is full to capacity. Billions of rands were spent on the dam to alleviate water shortages, but it currently does not supply to intended recipients. Philip van der Walt, SABC News, Limpopo.
Little rain is expected in the coming months. This means there will be no relief anytime soon for those who are adversely affected by the drought. Experts believe that the situation is likely to get worse.
We do have long-term data sets, particularly of the El Nino, La Nina cycles, and all of these are trending upwards. So indications are that we are in a deep, protracted regional drought that is likely to last potentially decadal, and that the next one will in fact be worse than the current one.
South Africa hopes to have enough rain to ease the worst drought in memory as the summer months approaches. Government is also intensifying its relief efforts, but is aware that the task ahead will be difficult.
South Africa is the 30th driest country in the world. We've got one of the most diversified economies in the world for the kind of hydraulic ecosystem we find ourselves in. So we've got a fairly good understanding of how to work or grow an economy under conditions of endemic water scarcity. There are a few new changes that are taking place. The one is the population growth factor. The second one is climate change that is bringing about an uncertainty. And it is the climate change issue that is actually making quite a substantial change, in the sense that up to now we've been building large dams, and the most reliable climate change predictions suggest that the South African ambient air temperature might go up by as much as 5 degrees over the next century, which of course is completely out of kilt with the global acceptable average increase of 2 degrees.
Agri-SA recently said that approximately 15,000 out of the 35,000 commercial farmers in the country have their backs against the wall. This is mostly because of the devastating drought. But experts believe that South Africa is not alone in this problem.
The world is in trouble when it comes to water shortages, because about 2/3 of the world is now approaching this point of water scarcity that's defined in a very specific hydraulic way. So we are going to transition globally into this water crisis, and the dynamics are simple. The volume of water we have on the planet is relatively stable and known, and has been around for millions of years, but the population growth is growing. So consequently, the number of people per unit of water, this is what's driving the problem. On top of that, you've got climate change as an unknown variable. So the simple truth is that globally we are facing this problem. In South Africa, it is simply more acute.
Current indications are that above normal rainfall and temperatures could be expected only by the early summer season in South Africa. This means that a bit of relief could be expected only then. Yolisa Njomela, CCTV, Johannesburg, South Africa.
From an ongoing political storm to two tropical systems on the satellite. Hermine spinning off the coast of New England as another storm, Hurricane Newton, makes landfall in Cabo this morning. And of course, Ginger is tracking it all for us. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning to you, Robin. Yes, Cabo San Lucas on attack there. The landfalling hurricane looking impressive on satellite, 90+ mile-per-hour winds with a Cat 1. The moisture will eventually make its way into the southwest of the United States here. Potential flash flooding. But there's video from Cape Cod, or Nantucket, Massachusetts, where the wind is blowing. They've got trees and power lines down. That's that same system we've been following for weeks. You can see the track there. You know it made landfall in Florida. You know it went through the southeast. And then this weekend, people were going, what about that hurricane we heard about? Well, it became a post-tropical cyclone, kept going east, leaving us much drier, but we are still under tropical storm warning up in parts of southern New England along the coast. Michael?
Tropical storm Julia is churning off the southeast coast of the United States. It's expected to gain strength and dump rain on Georgia and the Carolinas. David Begnaud is in Charleston, South Carolina. David?
Scott, right now along Charleston's famed battery, the wind is gusting at about 25 to 30 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center says Tropical Storm Julia is offshore, moving slowly and erratically. Julia formed last night over land just west of Jacksonville, Florida. It's the first time that's happened in the state of Florida, and it is unusual for a storm to form over land. It was 2 weeks ago that Tropical Storm Hermine dumped nearly a foot of rain in some of the same southeastern U.S. areas that are now feeling the effects of Tropical Storm Julia. Scott, the National Hurricane Center says Julia will remain a tropical storm for the next 2 to 3 days and may even strengthen.
David Begnaud on the Carolina coast. David, thank you very much.
Tropical Storm Julia quickly formed just right along the coast there in North Florida. There's a look from New Smyrna Beach where we have those tropical storm force winds that extend over 100 miles from the center on the northeast side of this system. So really remarkable thing to develop so quickly. Definitely windy conditions and a lot of rain. In fact, there's already some damage. In fact, in North Florida, there are some buildings that have been damaged. It ripped apart part of a roof of a gas station in Neptune Beach. That was near Jacksonville. Now, we also have seen Julia knock out power to more than 1,300 people in Georgia. And that's just so far. People along the coast are being urged to watch out for flash flooding, and some areas could get an absolute deluge of rain, not to mention the threat of tornadoes like this one.
Perth has been battered by a second night of wild storms that caused major damage north and south of the river. Sherry Lee Biggs joins us now, and Sherry, Baldivis was one of the worst areas hit.
Yes, Sammy, residents say their suburb was hit by what appeared to be a tornado, but the Weather Bureau says there was no indication of that. Instead, meteorologists believe it was simply a powerful cold front. Wind gusts of up to 60 kilometres an hour were felt in Perth, 82 kilometres recorded at Rottnest Island.
The storm was brief, but packed a punch. The roof of this Baldivis deli torn off and hurled onto busy Mandurah Road. Live power lines hit by flying debris, cutting power to about 4,500 homes. Mandurah Road between Pike Road and 80 Road shut down for most of the day amid fears the roof may contain asbestos. The cold front hit around 6:30 last night, packing winds of over 80 kilometres an hour. Baldivis residents believe their suburb was hit by something much stronger, a tornado.
Fairly black cloud, lots and lots of sideways rain, pretty ferocious wind. There was a really big roar.
From what we recorded and what we saw on the radar, there was nothing particularly unusual about the system. It was a strong cold front with squally showers.
North of the river, Dianella also copped a hammering. More roofs ripped off and trees uprooted.
So we had part of their roof and roof timbers all had come through here.
This man was halfway through sprucing up the front of his home. A brick wall prepared for rendering, toppled by an extreme force of nature.
Bit of a shock. We kind of just woke up in the middle of the morning, about 3, 4 a.m, heard a few crashes and bangs.
His neighbours not so lucky. Their roof torn away. It was the second night in a row Perth has been lashed by wild weather. Wind speeds on Tuesday night reaching 107 kilometres an hour.
Adelaide has been slammed by a severe storm overnight, with flash flooding and power outages causing chaos across the city. For more, we're joined by Nine's Tom McLean in Adelaide. Tom, good morning. Let's go to you first. Take us through the extent of the damage.
Well, Lisa, a huge amount of rain yesterday evening. In about half an hour, we had about 30 millimetres of rain in 30 minutes in Adelaide's eastern suburbs. That saw the SES out. They had to do a lot of work. The volunteers there doing a great job. About 150 jobs overnight, and probably more this morning as people wake up and see the extent of the flooding in some homes and businesses around the suburbs. We also had a lot of lightning strikes, including one that hit a car that was driving in Adelaide's southern suburbs. A woman behind the wheel there, well, she's okay now, but she was taken to hospital in a stable condition, telling paramedics she had a tingling sensation in her fingers and hands. And then she's also had a lot of other issues around the area. We had a hospital where they had to move some patients out because there was flooding in the maternity ward, and just a huge amount of flooding in different properties. So a lot of clean-up work to go today. Lisa?
Certainly looks like a Tom McLean there in Adelaide. Thank you. And Stevie joins me now in the studio. Good morning to you, Stevie. So Adelaide copped it overnight. Now Victoria is bracing for a severe weather event.
Yeah, what we're seeing here, Lisa, is tropical moisture feeding into a cold front. We saw two cold fronts. They moved through Western Australia earlier in the week, causing some damage, and then over South Australia with the storms there. Now they're moving into western parts of Victoria, New South Wales and Tasmania. Victoria is set to get hit pretty hard with over a month's worth of rain in around about 24 hours, and residents are being warned. They've been put on standby for some flash flooding in those areas. Now, this is also being exacerbated by above average sea temperatures over the east coast of Australia. So that is really feeding moisture over Australia, and that is making these rain events even heavier. So we'll see areas like Griffith, Goulburn, New South Wales, Wangaratta in Victoria, Renmark in South Australia see some of the heaviest rain they've seen in probably 6 years. And this is just very bad timing because the river catchments are full at the moment with the amount of rain that we've had over winter. New South Wales had its third wettest winter on record. South Australia, its wettest winter in 15 years, and areas of northern Tasmania, as we saw those big rain events, they had the wettest 4 months ever on record. So the catchments are full, the ground is swollen with water, so it's just very bad timing for this rain to come down.
Wet start to spring. Yeah. Stevie, thanks a lot for that.
Nate's been across, huh?
And then just try and angle it down towards the dirt? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Down this end, and attach to that. So we attach one to then, one to that, and then pick it to the roof. Hold it up, hold it up to it. Yeah. Get it go up.
Alright, big one.
A super typhoon battered Taiwan today with winds topping 140 miles an hour. It's the strongest storm anywhere in the world this year. The powerful wind and heavy rain knocked out power to more than 500,000 homes and shut down air and train travel. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Julia dumped rain along the southeastern U.S. coast.
This year's most powerful storm, Typhoon Meranti, has slammed into China's southeastern coastal city of Xiamen early on Thursday morning. Power is out in large parts of the city and blackouts are spreading. Transmission lines are severely damaged. All local highways are closed. Authorities are on high alert amid sustained winds and torrential rain. The storm is now heading north, further into the Chinese mainland.
Well, this is the city of Xiamen, the commercial hub of Fujian province, but today so much of it looks like this. Testament to the force of Typhoon Meranti, which swept in across the Straits of Taiwan during the early hours of Thursday morning, packing winds of more than 300 kilometres an hour. Now, state media has described it as the biggest storm of all anywhere in the world this year. At the moment, more than 1 million people are still without electricity. Plane services have been disrupted, train services have been cancelled, and there remains the real risk of mudslides. There have been some truly surreal sights. This is a giant moon ball, because this is the start of the Mid-Autumn Festival here in China, a 3-day holiday. It's one of the reasons why businesses and schools are closed. And this ball has been bouncing in and around Fuzhou City, a truly unbelievable sight and something that people are talking about on social media here in China. Now, normally when you have damage on this scale, you expect there to be large numbers of deaths, injuries. That simply hasn't happened this time, and it's one of the reasons why people are really breathing a deep sigh of relief.
早上开始呢，当地的消防部门就出动了200多名官兵来协助进行这个道路的清障。你看， 在这个路口这个方向有一棵直径超过了50厘米，大概比人的腰都粗的树木已经连根拔起，横躺在了这个路口。那么，所以现在因为体量特别的大，没有办法用人抬的方式把它清理完，所以消防官兵只能是用这个斧头，先把这个树木把它分割成一段一段的走。那刚才也说到了，这个道路清障呢是重中之重，是因为